Hey, welcome to the Frequency and Faith channel. My name's Cody, and tonight we're going to be talking about Genesis chapter 27, which is, it was troubling for me because it touches on the topic of altruistic lies, which is lies that are done with good intentions. And I'm someone personally that I can't stand lying. Like, it just drives me nuts. It really does. I think that light, is it too bright? And am I coming through good? I hope so. That should work. So yeah, this chapter, Jacob's story, is challenging for me because he's a deceiver and he's very like tricksy. And I'm someone that I have a lot of challenges with lies, and probably some of it has to do with not only lies that were done to me, right, by other people, but lies that I had said that I seen caused chaos and hurt in other people's lives, right? Or I I partook in things that definitely reinforced a lie that someone else had to say. What's up, Curtis? And that's something that's really challenging for me. I don't like liars because, well, I don't like lies, period. Because lying like completely takes out all the foundation of your understanding of your world, right? You don't know where you are anymore. It's just like if you're like living a lie or representing yourself as someone that's not really who you are, it just makes everything fall out from underneath itself. So, for instance, if you go around and you like fake someone that you're not, and you acquire a bunch of friends being this person that you're just putting on a front for, when you go home and you're alone, the depression from that is like multiplied because deep down, you know how far you are away actually from that person that you are posing to be, right? And that's really hard to contemplate, and it's really hard to digest because, you know, everyone wants to be loved kind of for who they are. And the best way to go about that is by like pursuing truth, right? And biblically, it's like pursuing the truth that God has for you, right? And so I'll start reading today. And like I said, is Genesis chapter 27. And it starts with verse 1. Oh, that's my personal reading. That's Exodus. That's where I am personally. It starts in verse 1 with, when Isaac was old and his eyes were so weak that he could no longer see, he called for Esau, his older son, and said to him, "My son." "Here I am," he answered. So right from the get-go, we can see that Isaac is old. You know, it's stating that his eyes are so weak he could no longer see, and therefore he's coming to the end of his lifespan, and we can see that his senses are failing him, right? Like he must be getting close to closing time, if you guys know that song. And we'll pick up on we'll pick up right here. "Here I am," he answered. Isaac said, "I am now an old man and don't know the day of my death. Now then, get your weapons, your quiver and bow, and go out to the open country to hunt some wild game for me. Prepare me the kind of tasty food I like and bring it to me to eat so that I may give you my blessing before I die." And why this is important is we see that in the previous chapter, when Jacob and Esau were born, as they got older, it stated that Isaac, he had an affinity for he favored the other son, right? And that's because they shared a common hobby together, basically. It was, where is it? No, it's chapter 25, I think. Let me check this out. It says right here, And so it says right here in Genesis chapter 25, verse 27, says the boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So we can see here that Esau was the favorite son by Isaac, and how Isaac is holding this like family blessing, which runs through the genealogy of this family. Closing time. I was talking about if, so this is a real side note, but hi, Sharice. But closing time, if you've ever been to a bar, the bar in my own small town, hometown, every time it was like time for everyone to leave. So it'd be like bar time is 15 minutes ahead usually. It was like 1:45 and they close at 2 or something like that. They would play closing time. And so every time I hear closing time, I just remember that that's when the bar closed for my hometown back when I used to drink and do other things. So yeah, nevertheless, every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. That's very true. So back to what I was saying is Isaac favors Esau because he also is a man that enjoys wild game and he enjoys hunting, and he seems to be, more, I guess you could probably say they're more like masculine traits, right? Jacob seems to be more of a methodical, intellectual type, I would say. Because we can see that in the later chapters or the later texts that he is someone that thinks ahead, and he's very good with his words, and he's good at manipulating people. He has a knack for that, right? And that, like I said, that troubled me when I first read this text. I really didn't like it. It's like, I don't know about this. I really didn't like his character. It actually, well, I'll get to how it changed my perspective on everything. But so Isaac's on his deathbed basically here. He's reaching the end of his lifespan, and he's like, I'm holding this family blessing that was given to Abraham, his father. And he knows that Abraham was told by God himself that he's going to bless all nations through his seed, which is Isaac. And now Isaac is holding this blessing that he has to now pass down to one of his sons. And he has an affinity for Esau, so he's going to pass this blessing on to his son, right? And just a little side note, when Isaac calls for Esau, he says, "Here I am." And if you read previously in the Bible, when Isaac is called by God, and I think when Abraham is called by God, it's both of them state, "Here I am." I don't know why that phrase is so important, but it's repeated over and over in that manner. And so I'll pick up at verse 5, right after Isaac stating that he's going to give him the family blessing, which is a lot of pressure, right? Because, you don't want this blessing to die. You've been living this blessed life, and it would be really hard to handle the pressure of handling something that is given to you by God in such a direct manner as the way that Abraham received it, and the way that you've lived your life up until now. Like, Isaac's life is described in a way where it's not like, it seems like the veil between God and humanity, when it comes to some characters in the Bible, especially the Old Testament, that veil or that link was a lot stronger between him and his chosen, and the veil was somewhat lifted, right? Because we see him do like miraculous things, like crazy stuff through people, and that would increase the pressure of you wanting the family blessing to really carry on and succeed, right? And so this is where things get weird. Verse 5, Well, I'll just pick up at verse 4. Prepare me the kind of tasty food I like and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my blessing before I die. Now Rebekah was listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. When Esau left for the open country to hunt game and bring it back, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, Look, I overheard your father say to your brother Esau, Bring me some game and prepare me some tasty food to eat, so that I may give you my blessing in the presence of the Lord before I die. Now, my son, listen carefully and do what I tell you. Go out to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats, so I can prepare some tasty food for your father, just the way he likes it. Then take it to your father to eat, so that he may give you his blessing before he dies. Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, But my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I'm a man with smooth skin. What if my father touches me? I would appear to be tricking him and would bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing. His mother said to him, My son, let the curse fall on me. Just do what I say. Go and get them for me. And that, when I read that, obviously someone that I can't stand lies. I can't, because, and also I guess part of that probably has to do with if you've dealt with insecurities in your past or major depression in your past, and then you start getting into the Bible and you start reading like God's truth about you and how his perspective of you does not really reflect what you perceive in the world, you can really start to loathing the lies that you tell yourself about yourself or the lies that you live about yourself. And so I try to stay far away from people that lie, and it's hard, right? Like people lie without even knowing it. Like I lie without even knowing it. But I think that has to do with some of it. Why I'm so strongly against lying is because I used to have huge depression problems, and I know what I would tell myself or the stories in my head that would play all the time, and they weren't 100% true, right? There was little pieces of truth in that puzzle that I was trying to put together, but the lies would like formulate around those little pieces of truth to where it would become something else entirely. And I would believe that. And it was just like this bottomless pit that I would circle down all the time. And that's why I hate lies now, because it can just turn your world upside down. And when I read Rebecca, encouraging her son to lie or take part in this like act of deception, I was like, this is trash, right? This is completely ridiculous. And it challenged me a little bit with how I view God, kind of. I was like, how does this work? Right? In some notes that I wrote down, I wrote Isaac's wife, Rebecca, was listening to their conversation intentionally. She must have been, right? You would see that, like, if you really think about this, Rebecca, obviously, Isaac is to the point now where he's blind. In my little side notes in the Bible, this is for like verse like 29, but it states like, an old man, Isaac, had lost his eyesight and apparently much of his sense of touch, right? Because we'll see what Jacob does is he puts on like some animal fur or whatever to cover him. So when he touches him, he'll think that it's Esau, because Esau was said to be really hairy. And we see that Rebecca notices that Isaac is obviously, his time is coming to an end. His closing time is coming, right? And so for her to be listening like this, she must have been listening more than, I would imagine that she was listening more times than not, right? Because if you look back at when Jacob and Esau were born, or I guess I should say Esau and Jacob, because Esau was first. it's stated that God speaks directly to Rebekah about their birth, about the birth of these twins. So in Genesis chapter 25, verses 21 through 26, it says, Isaac, this is before they were born, obviously. Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was childless. The Lord answered his prayer, and his wife Rebekah became pregnant. The babies jostled each other within her, and she said, "Why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. The Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment, so they named him Esau. After this, his brother came out, with his hand grasping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. So we know that Rebekah is cognizant of the fact that God directly told her that the older will serve the younger. And therefore, since it's stated the older is going to serve the younger, and that two nations are going to be brought about through these kids, and one will be stronger than the other, common sense would tell you that, the one that is serving the older is going to be the stronger one, right? And so she's probably eavesdropping because she's been anticipating this moment as Isaac has been getting older, right? And she's obviously seen that Isaac is favoring Esau this whole time, right? Because it's stated clearly in the text that he had an affection for Esau because they shared the same interest, right? And that makes sense. And so she's eavesdropping, probably waiting to capitalize and ensure that Jacob, which it is stated that she loved Jacob in that verse that I read. So Jacob was like her favorite, and probably her favorite probably because of what God directly told her, right? Because he performs this miracle with her getting pregnant to begin with. And while they're in the womb, some contention's going on, and she's praying about it, and God answers. So, when God answers you and brings miracles in your life, it brings an importance to the things that come about through that miracle, right? It creates a personal attachment to it. And I think that can also be said about times that you are in struggle, and when God gets you through or finally breaks down that wall that's stopping you, or maybe something clicks in your head, and now, you're in the promised land, out of the wilderness, so to speak, metaphorically, right? And so Rebecca would have like skin in the game, so to speak, right? And when she sees Isaac older at the end of his life, she's eavesdropping to ensure that the blessing is passed down to Jacob. And then she tells Jacob, go do this deceitful thing. And Jacob's concerned, obviously, right? Because as he states, he's what was that? 20. Oh, right here. Oh. Said, but my brother Esau's a hairy man. Oh, no, that's not it. Oh, yeah. What if my father touches me? I would appear to be tricking him and would bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing. So he's aware of the fact that this isn't straight up, right? That these hands being dealt to Isaac, unbeknownst to him, are not accurate to what he is representing him. And that really challenged me for a while. I was like, wait, that doesn't really register with me at all. And I think what's going on here is God understands the context, and he's bringing about the promise that he gave Abraham, right? And I also wondered if, well, I'll just go over my notes here. I think this goes to show you that our human understanding is still extremely small compared to God's. And I'm not condoning lying. I still can't stand it, but there are places in the Bible where scenes play out like this that seem to be morally gray or wrong from most people's perspectives, but done with the intention to bring about the perceived purpose that God has on the given scenario, and we see God honor it. And that's troubling to me. And it ultimately shows that context matters. It also, this is kind of I don't know if people would say this is controversial, but it challenged me a little bit. I was like, I wonder if God made Isaac's senses dulled and him blind just for this scenario to be brought about, to be possible. Because we'll see that Jacob puts on some animal skin, right, which has fur on it. And any person with like some reasonable, some like deductive reasoning, and some common sense and a sound mind would know the difference, right? He must be really like physically about to be gone, and mentally, obviously. Isaac, I mean. And so I wondered if God dulled Isaac's senses because God knew Isaac's favoritism towards Esau, and the only way that the younger or the older was going to end up serving the younger is through this act of deception, which is interesting. It was really hard pill for me to swallow. I don't really like it a lot. But it's like God's smart enough to know what Rebecca is doing and why she's doing it. And it also makes me wonder if Rebecca ever told Isaac about what God told her. Like I looked in the chapters and I can't find it where it states that Rebecca told Isaac that two nations are going to be brought about and the older is going to serve the younger. I don't know. And it's not really comfortable for me to accept the fact that I probably think that God did make Isaac blind and dull his senses towards the end of like his life cycle or his time here in this dimension to bring about this scenario. And that's why Rebecca is straight up with Jacob and is just like, let the curse fall on me. Go do this, It kind of reminded me of people that, and I'm not dissing anybody, but people that they don't do yoga because the poses originated from Hinduism, I think, the Hindu gods or something. And, people could be stretching and not even know that they're hitting like one of those positions, right? And I've heard like some Christians say that it's like demonic to do yoga or whatnot, or, something along those lines. And I understand that if you find that true in your heart and it like does something to you, then, I get it. But I think a story like this shows that God, well, he obviously knows your heart and what you're thinking. He's not dumb enough not to know that if you're stretching in a position that is congruent with a yoga position, represents the same thing, or if you're just doing yoga but not worshiping Hindu gods, he knows you're not worshiping Hindu gods, right? He knows that. He obviously knows that. Because if he didn't, I don't understand why a scenario like this would even be played out in the Bible. And it's when I Googled this to research this, it's like all over the place. Like some Christian sites are like, this is bad. And then other Christian sites are like, God relies on context, which personally, I would err on the side of the position that I don't naturally like, which is God understands context. He understands your heart, because the character that is depicted in the Bible, like if you would say one character in the Bible is labeled as the dude with a pure heart, it would be David. He's said to be a man after God's own heart. And David is brutally honest with God in prayer, like brutally honest. And so I love that God can honor us in our humanity, and he understands like how fallen the world is. And he understands like certain scenarios. You know, we're not perfect. After the fall, where Eve, ate from the forbidden fruit, from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and fell, and God kicked him out of the garden, things changed forever from then on, right? And as much as I really was challenged with this story, just this section of it, it ultimately brings me peace to know that amongst all my royal screw ups and me being a complete dumbass all these years, that God understands scenarios like this and that they've been brought about, right? And I'm not saying this gives you like a pass go to lie at all. I still don't believe that. I don't. But if you think about it, you think about how I was thinking, people go to war in the Bible all the time. Like you read the Old Testament and you hear pastors talk about, anybody that went to war or led an army against someone else and they killed people, right? We don't really bat an eye to that. And I think that's because the average person can't relate to war the way that they can relate to lying. Everyone knows the fallout from lying, and everyone has a personal psychological connection to what lying does to your understanding and perception of your world. Everyone's been affected by a lie personally. Everyone. Right? And I think when you see people lie here in the Bible and God still blesses them, I think people just can't stand that because they've been in it so much. They're so used to it, That's something they can touch and that's real. Whereas if you talk to someone that's been in war, I'm sure if you described a war scene to them, that scene would feel far more real to them than it would me, because I've never been in a situation with gunfire flying by or people charging at me from front lines, right? And so that's why I think people are so vehemently against the lying thing, as well. In comparison, they're not so much with the war, it seems like, right? It seems that's what I gather. And I'm not saying people are like condoning the war in the Bible, but if you were to tell people that God condoned someone to lie in the Bible, I think that would be more challenging to someone to hear than, well, God condoned those people to kill their enemies. And that's interesting, isn't it? That us as humans or society has, I believe we accept the war over the lies. And that's something that really blew my mind, because I thought about it for a long time. And I think it's true. What do you guys think that are watching this? Would you, right? I can't really find any way around that. I think it's because, yeah, everyone's been lied to, and it hurts. It's like when someone lies to me, it's like I can't trust what they say anymore. So I don't know who the hell they are. I don't know what they're saying. I don't know. And if I don't know who I'm talking to, I don't even know how to interact with that person anymore. I don't know how to interact with them I guess from a godly perspective. I guess I would just listen, right? And from a perspective of, I don't know, it'd be like a mental note if I knew someone was a liar. It's just like, that's noted, and it's complicated because some people will lie to some people in their lives because they're afraid of them because of past trauma, and they can carry out that behavior. Fell down. They'll carry out that behavior with other individuals in their life from like post-traumatic stress disorder, basically, from things that's happened in the past. So you don't really know if they're lying to you because they're trying to do something to hurt you, or if they're just trying to protect themselves from things that have happened to them. Maybe so far in the past, they don't even know what's going on anymore. This is just a part of life. And like some people grow up in families where they have to lie to survive. And I think those type of situations are probably, well, they probably be similar to the type of situations where God understands the context. It's like if someone held a gun to well, I guess there's that depiction that I've heard people talk about. If, let's say, when the Nazis were going around and they went up to a house and there was Jews inside that someone was hiding, and they go to the homeowner and they're like, "Hey, do you have any Jews here?" Do you think God's really going to damn that person for lying and saying no to save their lives? Curtis, right? No one really thinks that, right? That's complicated. But this story was a little bit more subtle in the lies. It seemed planned, right? Planned lying has like a vindictive connotation to it. When you're like strategizing a lie. Because Rebecca must have been, you would think so, right? She's been with Isaac for so long. Curtis says, Metal Junkie 77. We all lie to God or have. Yes, that is a good point. I believe God knows, like parents know, that there are good lies and bad lies. Probably just 3 weeks ago or a month or two ago, I would have probably disagreed with that statement. But I don't think I do anymore. I don't. I agree with you. I do agree with you. What I used to think is, let's talk about that scenario where someone's hiding Jews, for instance, and Nazi come to their door. I would have said, I think God would have raised a miracle if he would have had the faith to tell the truth and think that God would protect them anyway. And that's hard to argue against, right? Isn't that hard to argue against? That's hard for me to digest. It is. And I still wrestle with it a little bit because there are scenarios where, well, that's why the context matters, because there are scenarios wherein, God will never put us in something that we can't handle with him, which I think a lot of people get that wrong, where they say God will never put you in anything you can't handle. I disagree. I think God will put you in places that you can't handle alone, that require his help. And that's why the depiction of wrestling with God is so powerful, which we'll come to later on in the chapters where Jacob is wrestling with God. Because that's life, right? We're constantly wrestling with God all the time. And Jordan Peterson's tour, his new book's called Wrestling with God, and I just seen him with his presentation here in Omaha, and it was amazing. And he was speaking on that too, about how, the scenarios that are brought about in our lives, the suffering that we endure here, we should take it with humility. We should wrestle with God from a position of humble humility, right? Of being humble, right? Of having even the ability to wrestle with Him to begin with. And there are some lessons in life where I can openly admit that I would have not learned if I would have not been damaged in some manner. And just like this story, how God's perspective is so large that it overrides our human understanding of the concept of lying, essentially. It's like I have to accept the fact that what happens here on earth is temporary, and I'm better for being hurt, and I'm better for having the things that happen to me. And if it didn't change, and if it's not changing now, it's just like Paul when he prayed to God for some thorn, something that was he described to as a thorn to be removed from him. I think he said he prayed for it 2 or 3 times and he didn't remove it. So that means God likes what that thorn was producing in him, which I've heard before. I've heard Darius Daniels say that and other pastors, but also when Jacob wrestles with God, he gets a limp. Having a limp keeps you humble in a way. It's a reminder, right? And sometimes we need a real strong reminder to keep our heads low and in a posture of servitude before God in order for him to pave the way in life for us to follow. You look at Jesus' life and God sent a portion of himself to be in a human vessel, which is Jesus, and it's this conglomeration of some sort of being that's 100% man and 100% God. We can't understand. And I think Jesus, he obviously had the ability to learn stuff, which is odd because he was a God and knew everything. But he had to be able to have the ability to fully experience what humans experience, the race of organisms that he came to save, right? He had to feel an intimate relationship with what we feel. So God put himself in a vessel, and then he ended up being purposed to be the victim of murder at the hands of his chosen people that he came to save. And not just, yeah, it's like he didn't just come to save just them. He saved all humanity. And the ones that, killed him, fought for it to kill him, were the chosen people. And that's a big representation of wrestling with God. It's so crazy to think about. And it's complicated for me to even really understand how lying in any situation is okay because it goes against everything I believe. It did for a while. I remember the first time I read this story with Jacob, I was pissed, honestly. I was like talking to God while I was reading. I was like, why is this? I was like, I told God, I remember that now. I told God straight up as I was reading it. I looked up and I was like, I don't like this dude, man. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't like him. Like if I met him in real life, I would tell him that I don't like him. Like, straight up. I would be like, "I don't like what you're about, and I don't care what you say about it." Like, I would. It was like, "I don't like this." But then as I read the story and really started thinking about it, it kind of it humbled me in a sense where we don't really know why people are doing the things that they do in the world. This this world is cruel, and it's hard a lot of the time. No matter how bright it is in your season, there's always someone out there struggling a million times worse than you could ever imagine somewhere. And so it kind of it made me understand that I don't really know the whole story behind people's actions, someone such as Jacob, and it's not right for me to judge if he's lying or why he's lying. And it's not right for me to judge God for him choosing that this is okay, right? It's not for me to know, right? I need to get caught up in chat. I believe, okay. Curtis says, that's what I've come to learn. We can't live this life alone, coming from me, who just began again to be in a relationship with God and Jesus. And I congratulate you with that, Curtis. We've had a lot of chats on. Yeah. I'm really happy for you, man. You know, when people come to me and they're like, and I do have people often come to me that I wouldn't say often, but they do. Because I have this, it's interesting. I actually just thought about this today, Curtis. You'll probably laugh. I am more comfortable around people from the streets, quote unquote, in that sort of environment than I am around Christians in that sort of setting. And I don't know if some of it, I believe, has to do with my calling. Some of it has to do with my past, the way that I lived. And some of it probably has to do with my fear of letting that side of me go because I've known it for so long. And just like other people, you know, I fall victim to thinking that Christians are very judgmental all the way across the board when that's not true. And you also have to understand, just like the matter of this lying thing, how there's context, Christians that are judgmental, they probably got raised in a home where their, you know, mother and father were also enacting that sort of behavior and they learned from it. It was passed down to them, right? Just in the same manner of someone that, you know, could be like grow up to be a gangster or something, right? Maybe they were born into that as well. It's like we don't know what lives people are living, and we don't know what has been handed to them through just what they see and are, you know, immersed with every day. And it's not right for us to judge them. And that's very hard for me. That's very hard for me because I can't stand it when people are really judgmental towards others because it just like shuts out all the opportunity and possibility to tell them about God, period. It's the most counterintuitive thing that Christians do is judge others, including other Christians, and then give off this vibe of like, we have a holier than thou way of behaving, and you need to act like X, Y, or Z, or you have fallen short from the mark. It's like that sort of messaging doesn't really work. I believe that there is a standard to uphold and we should strive towards it. And it's not easy at all. But it's hard for me to you know, get immersed in like Christian circles, I think it is. I think it is ish. It also has to do with the common Christian language. And that's a topic for another time. Maybe I'll go into it. I don't know. But what I was saying is there's a lot of people that, are not Christians that reach out to me because, I'm tethered to that sort of non-Christian world in a manner that maybe other people aren't so attuned to, right? And I have a lot of people ask me questions like you did, and they're like, "Man, what does God do for you, man? I lost this. That maybe they used to have the faith, and now they want to come back, and they're just curious. They're lost, right? A little bit. And there is one person that I need to reach out to that asked me about it 3 months ago, and I'm sure that he's thought that I forgot about him, but I haven't. That's something about me. If you ever think that I just forget about you, I don't. I don't. I don't at all. I'm a very intentional person. And so I've been thinking about this person for 3 months, and I haven't reached back out to him because everybody's scenario is different, right? And how you present someone into the kingdom matters. And what you tell them about accepting Jesus as their personal savior matters, because it doesn't make your life necessarily easier. I think it gives your life, I'm just going to say it, I think it makes your life, by earthly standards, harder because of that wrestling with God interaction. And so, Curtis, when you reached out to me and you were like, what do I do? And I'm just like, just start reading the Bible and ask God to give you a sign and just show you, right? And then I think that's the best way to go, is just leave it in God's hands. There's some people that are that's been so damaged by the world that won't work with. But, well, I won't say it won't. In all cases, God can do anything. But I'm really happy that you've gotten back in a relationship with him. It just makes everything easier. What is saying here? Jesus was a man just like you and me, and he felt what we felt and got thirsty and hungry. That's true. Shree says, when I couldn't sleep for months last year, I prayed for God to allow me to fall asleep peacefully. And God didn't give me that. Instead, he allowed me to fear and keep me awake because I got to know him. That's right. That is a perfect example of wrestling with God. That is a perfect example. That is 100% true. For instance, my post-concussion symptoms are almost gone. Like, they've been getting better, which is, it's amazing. My memory is slowly coming back, like, actually. And someone that is so particular in details, which is a part of how God made me and wired me. Like, you can probably tell just by how I speak, I think a little bit different, and I look at things from a weird perspective, and I think of all these angles. I'm just, computer programmer, architect, artist type dude. And so when things are off in my life, or I have taken damage somewhere, either spiritually, emotionally, or psychologically, and I can tell that something is not sitting the way it used to be, it drives me fucking nuts. Like, maddening. It will just drive me insane because I'm so detail oriented. And it's been the biggest blessing to me to just be like having this wrestling with God of, why aren't you healing me? Why aren't you healing me? It's like I'm in such a low percentage in the population of people that get concussions. Why am I not healed? It's like I survived, being a victim of attempted murder. Like, I should be dead. I had like a less than 8% chance of living, or like a 7% chance of living through the night. It's like, why is this affecting me? Why is this happening? And what, the realization I came to is like, what did I write down in my prayer journal? I have it right here, actually. It was, where was it? It was part of Exodus. This is way off topic, kind of. But in Exodus, there's a part where in the last, we'll get there too, because this Bible series will be going through the whole Bible in chronological order. As you can tell, like, I've read the Bible, I think 4 or 5 times from front to back. I don't know how many times now. But I'm to the point now, which I'll just say this. Curtis, I would encourage you, or anyone that ever watches this, read the Bible. And something that the Marcus Dudley from this Bible U program that told me that really helped me. He told me to read till you're full every day, which could just be 3 verses, could be like 20 chapters. I don't know. But read it till you come away with something. And the way God speaks to you through it, when you first start reading the Bible, it's going to be like reading Braille. It takes effort. It's like actually wrestling with God to understand it. It's not like, I've heard people say it's simple. When people say the Bible's simple, I'm like, what are you talking about? Anyway, it's not. When you first read the Bible, it can be hard to relate to the stories in a manner that brings about life change. Okay? Now, there are some people where God will just unload on them right away. But the Bible is something that it's like a living organism where you build a relationship with it and God uses it as a tool to teach you things, right? That's why on like my 4th time through the Bible, I don't know how many times I've read it now. Maybe just 3, maybe 4, I don't know. But when I read something, I see something different because the circumstances playing out in my life, maybe during that time or maybe in the past, or maybe I've just grown in a place now where, for instance, what if you went through therapy and you just got done going through a bunch of stuff from your past and now you can connect it to stories in the Bible and you can see like, oh, hey, this is why that's still bothering me, right? And the lessons that you learn from the Bible, it changes over time. And it's absolutely insane. It's really crazy. It's really crazy. And I don't want to lose that. When the Marcus Dudley said, read to your full, I also apply that to sermons. I used to watch like 4 or 5 sermons every Sunday. I'm a nut, I know. And because I was just obsessed with like learning as much as I can about this. And now I don't watch nothing. Because I read the Bible and I journal. It takes me like some days half an hour, some days 20 minutes, some days an hour and a half, some day 2 hours. But sometimes I'll read a chapter, sometimes a verse. Sometimes I'll just go ham off like 4 verses and get like pages because I'm insane. And I don't want to overlap that foundation. Sometimes you're called to, right? Like I think there's some seasons you're in when you should just like take in the information and some stuff will stick, some will fall away, right? And I would just encourage you to keep in the Bible every day, like read it every day, like just every day. You can start out with dedicate 30 minutes to it every morning. And if you don't use the full 30 minutes, sweet. If you do, sweet. If you go over, sweet. But I would really encourage you to do that. And so back to my topic of what I was really struggling with as far as the concussion thing, the post-concussion symptoms. It's like what really brought me out of it is Moses. And during the last curse that or plague that he puts upon the Egyptians is he kills all the firstborns, all of them, just murks them, like nukes all the firstborns in Egypt. Like it's brutal. And there's just like, it says that the town is just filled with cries of people like discovering their children dead, right? And this is after the Pharaoh has rejected letting the Israelites go from Egypt 1 billion times. But also, what's hard to digest here is it literally states, I'll just read this part here. this is what got me out of like my funk, kind of. This was part of it. I wouldn't call it a funk, but this is an example of wrestling with God for a long time and then reading something in the Bible that gives you something that is like a key to open a door, not only to get out, but to view something differently. It's a different thing to walk somewhere else, to go to new land, than it is looking at the land you're currently in from a different perspective. They're both ways out. That doesn't get talked about enough. People talk about going into the promised land all the time. It's like, what about turning the wilderness into the promised land itself? Right? That's a thing. I've never heard that before. Anyway, so this verse here, verse 10, it says, as Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified. This is after the Israelites are already being led out of Egypt. Pharaoh was like, okay, they can go. All of our firstborns are dead. Get out of here. You know, this was like the straw that broke the camel's back. He let the Israelites out of Egypt. So then the Pharaoh had a change of heart. God hardened his heart. And so Pharaoh's like, I'm going to pursue them now. I'm going to go kill them. And that's hard to digest, but God hardened his heart so this would happen. And it says the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. And Moses answered, do not be afraid, stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You only need to be still. And this verse here, right after that, so Moses just told them this, be still, stand firm in the Lord. God, right after that, says, then the Lord said to Moses, why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea. Divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go in after them. I will gain glory through Pharaoh and all his army, through his chariots and his horsemen. The Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I gain glory through Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. So what that showed me was basically during my time of wrestling with God about things, I was the Israelites here, and I was crying to God for help. And Moses, who is like the chosen person of God at that time in the world, right? Moses is one of the most important characters in the Bible ever. Moses is doing the right thing, saying, stand firm in the Lord, he will deliver you. And God straight up is like, why are you crying out to me? What are you doing? Tell the Israelites to move on. And that just like made something click, right? It's just sometimes we can stand there and just wait for God to deliver us for so long. And sometimes you just have to walk into the chaos to let God do what he does, right? And that's really hard. And it takes intentionality. It takes courage. It takes so much courage. It doesn't take like having less fear. It takes having more courage to go, you know? And it can be real easy to sit and wallow in your self-pity or depression or whatever it is, just your frustration of being in the situation you're in. And it can feel like the right thing to do too, to wait on the Lord. And it's really hard to discern like what season you're in. And that's why I think reading the Bible every day is so important. And that's also the word that I've gotten from the Bible directly has superseded anything that I've ever received from a pastor in my life. And it's not even comparable. It's not. But I also think that it takes effort and it takes intentionality in building a relationship with God in order to get to a point where you receive things like that, and not only receive them, but to a point where you can actually implement them in your life in a way that it psychologically sits on your framework of understanding of the world and how God perceives it, not in a way where you fully encompass and have full, like, you're not cognizant of the fact that I can see as God sees, but you know that I can't see as God sees. But I at least now can receive the word from the instrument that he has gave us, right? Directly to use to help us interface with this world, right? And you got to understand, when a pastor gives you a word, he is going to give it through his filter. And I'm not saying pastors are bad. They're amazing. But I would say that when you read the Bible directly, right? And it's a process. Todd, I'm so glad you're here, dude. I love you. You probably can relate to this real hard. Yeah, you're going to be loving it. And it's like the Bible, when you read it yourself, when you shut everything off and you're just reading the Bible, the way God speaks to you through the text, and I want to preface this with, once you have built up that relationship, not only with God, but it's like your skill of using the instrument that is the Bible. Because that's how you have to perceive it, right? It's like this holy text that has survived all these generations of the world. That's insane. It's the most important document in mankind. That's crazy. And it's like what you receive from the Bible is directly to you. There's no filter that's being brought through someone else's psychology, because that's going to happen, and someone else's language, right? Now, sometimes it's just like a drug addict or someone that has maybe a phobia to a fear, or some really hard anchor that's like in the bottom of this pit of malevolence or depression, or a wall that is stopping them from behavior that would cause them to succeed in life. Sometimes you have to have the veil pulled from your eyes from another person. That's why groups like AA are amazing, because it has community and everything else. Community is always important. And sometimes you have to have someone teach you how to read the text and understand the text, right? It's just like you learning a new skill and getting a mentor. But there comes a time when it comes a time. God is always your greatest mentor, period. I don't care who it is. I don't care. God, you lowering yourself to God and coming at him from a stance of servitude and being like, hey, I am lost, man. I need your help. Speak to me, Lord, please. And what he says to you from that position is nothing even compares. Like, it's so interesting to me. It really is. And but I also know that there are times when you need community. I would not suggest everyone to do what I'm doing right now. And I think it's probably only for a season, because I come on here to, you do have to be careful with this line of thinking. That's just what I was getting to. I wouldn't suggest this for everyone to shut off pastors. I don't think you should. But I think if you are substituting your Bible reading time for a sermon, I would not suggest that. You should read the text that you say you believe in. You should read it yourself, right? You should. You should read it yourself with the intentionality to get better with it. And you shouldn't just rely on others to provide you the information. That's what I think. That's probably the biggest problem, I would say, is when others rely on other people to bring it to them. Because it just, It's like, it's just interesting because there's some things you do really need another person. But there comes a point where I'm just saying you shouldn't substitute it. You should have this and that, I think. And there are seasons where you're going to be watching pastors more than you are reading the Bible. I've been there. And, but nevertheless, Curtis, I'm happy that you're reading the Bible, man. And it will help you and it'll take a long time. And I think part of the reason it's like hard to comprehend is it's like wrestling with God to like try to figure out how is this helping me, right? And God can speak through anything. Like Charisse, I know. Yeah, fact check the Bible for yourself. Thank you, Charisse. That's exactly what I'm getting at. My martial arts coach, I haven't been there in a couple weeks just because life's been pulling me in other directions. Yeah, it is not a read through and done, Todd. You right. Yep. Bring the Bible. Not only bring it to church, but you should use that tool and like really seek things out in it. And even if you don't believe in God, like reading the Bible is productive, right? And there's been studies in like psychological studies of people that read fiction stories. Like, let's say if you didn't believe the Bible to be true, people, their like their happiness in life and like their skills. There's been studies that shows like it raises through like fiction novels, not just like nonfiction, because like people would think that reading like fantasy and stuff, but you can, which also I think goes into God can speak through literally anything, right? Which is absolutely amazing. It is. It's so wild. So if you don't even believe the Bible to be true, you could most definitely get lessons from it. It's just like if I were to read another religious text from another religion, I could extrapolate lessons from it. Now, I wouldn't recommend that to somebody that isn't really strong in their faith because I think there are spirits of other manners, I think, right? Obviously, if you believe the Bible to be true. Like, for instance, the magicians, Moses, when God told him to go perform his, I would say, his acts with the staff before Pharaoh to display God's power in a manner. It was like him proposing a deal to Pharaoh. Hey, God can allow me to do this. This is just a peek of what he can do, like turn his staff into a snake. And he does that, but the magicians are able to copy that. That means they were tapping into a power that must exist in the world. So there must be other ways to do things. This is really controversial to say, but there must be other ways to do things that God has brought about in the Bible in the manner that was displayed in regards to like Moses doing what he did with the staff. Does that make sense? Don't take that out of context. What I'm saying is like there's multiple ways to make money. You can do it the right way and the wrong way. And there's a certain spirit behind both, right? And that's pretty much as simple as that. So I know there has to be other sort of entities in the world that are not good or of God that have sort of power. Has to be, because it's in the Bible. I'm not just making this up. It's like it is what it is. And I'm not saying I understand it, but it's interesting to me. So I wouldn't recommend someone else to go read another text from a religion that is not Christianity until they are strong in their faith here, because other stuff will pull at you, right? It's just like I wouldn't suggest someone that had a huge alcohol problem to go to a party like a year after they stopped drinking alcohol. Right? I'm concerned that the pastor has to remind the congregation to bring their Bible. I'm not. That should be reminded every week. Actually, it should be read the Bible, right? Sermon is the appetizer. Your own study is the meal. I agree with you 100%. And there is a priceless value in going to a structure and a building with people that are all there for the same thing. And in our case, it's even extrapolated because we're all there for God, right? You can't put an actual measurement on how valuable that is to you. It's really valuable. It is. Does my phone Bible app count? I think so. I've had this Bible for like since I was a kid, and I've said it before. It even has a name tag, and I can remember the moment when I sat down in this church and put that name tag on there when I was just a kid. And some people would say you should get like a grown-up Bible, and it's like no, because it's just like having a daily journal from like having a journal of like 3 years of time. I can go back to old dates and see how much I've grown. It's like I look at this Bible, and some people look and see like a kid's casing over a Bible. But what I look at it is all of the things that I have had to wrestle with God with, and that I've had to fight through literal blood, sweat, and tears to even exist, to even still be here. Right? And it makes me grateful and humble. I remember where I've been. Yeah. So I'm probably never going to change it. I don't think so. Yeah. But did you understand the what I was speaking about in regards to Rebecca and lying to Isaac? You guys get how that's complicated? How God, it isn't complicated, but it is. It's like one of those things where, well, that's not complicated until it happens to you, right? What if God what if someone lied to you and God thought that lie was okay and it hurt your feelings because it was a lie, but it wasn't really wrong because it was a part of their calling? What? Right? Yeah. I don't know. God uses everything. Yeah. I don't know yeah, it's hard. It's hard for me to digest. It was hard, but it grew me. It did. And God's so good. I don't even know. I don't even know how many verses, dude. That's what I'm saying. Like, I just get like 4 verses and I can just go on for like, I could probably go on for another hour, but it is what it is. And I keep having this damned crackling happen. It's happening when the processing after this YouTube. Have you guys heard crackling at all? After this gets uploaded, there's like a crackling that appears in my audio, and it's so annoying. It's only on YouTube. I can't stand it. It's probably the devil trying to stop me. I would too if I was him. Oh yeah, we got 14 verses, 13 verses. That's pretty good. Pretty good. So I think I'm gonna wrap up there, and I will be back. I kind of like doing this at night. This is the first time doing this in the PM. I think it's pretty all right. Hey JP, thank you for coming. Yeah, my schedule right now has been weird. I I have a lot going on at work and everything else. And so I'm just trying to lay down it all on the table and just do what you want with it. I'm tired of carrying it. Yeah, just do what you want. So I like doing this in the PM. I don't know if I'll be live again Friday or maybe I'll go a day before or something. I don't know. But this was pretty fun. This was good. Thank you, JP. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's like I'm at a place now. People tell me I'm doing great, and I appreciate that. But I like seriously, I'm really at a place now where I'll do this for 0 people until I die. I'm good, right? It's not because this is just what I'm supposed to do. This is what I'm supposed to do. I don't care if anybody watches. Like I want them to, I think, obviously, but it's more about serving in the manner that God has called me. I don't care what someone says that I should be doing online. I don't care about the views. I don't care about the likes. I don't care. I don't care about the money. I don't care. I don't care. It's like, dude, I'm gonna get off on a tangent. The money thing is, dude, no, don't. Why'd you have to say anything? Okay, I'm just gonna say it. The money thing. I look at mate. We can the money thing. God blesses people financially in the Bible, but I always have viewed the characters as. I was telling my dad this the other day. I've never worried about money. In fact, years ago when I was unemployed and that whole thing that like made me jump off to really go into the void with no job lined up, and God gave me this dream job that I have. When I wrote down a crazy number for a salary to get someday, I now have passed that number. Okay. And back then that number was crazy. I was like, God's done that. And I'm going to tell you now, it's what he has shown me is like, I don't really care about really having a bunch of fancy stuff or being able to do a bunch of stuff. I just don't really. Like I'd probably be doing the same thing if I had like billions of dollars. I'd just be probably giving a ton of it away all the time. And I was telling my dad the other day, I was like, I look at characters in the Bible and it seems like they were all blessed with riches, but it seems like that was just runoff from their purpose, right? Like Abraham, for instance, he was chosen. So God just like built him up. I don't think, I don't, I don't remember, I don't know, Abraham ever asking for money. I don't know. I just don't. It's like I don't really recall people asking for finances very much in the Bible. I can't recall it off the top of my head. And it just seems like the financial blessing was just runoff from their original blessing. And that kept the posture of their heart right. And so I don't like, I'll still pray for finances, right? Obviously for financial gain, but it's more from a posture of literally what he wants to do with it, right? And I think it's a real easy trap to fall into where you start celebrating your financial gain so much that it subconsciously becomes an idol in your heart. And you start celebrating the monetary platform in your life raising more than your relationship with God raising. That's just, I think it's real easy to fall into. And I think I've fallen into it. I have. And it's also really complicated because there are people out there that God has called them to be financial producers, to like shove money into things that they can fund. So God knows, and he has context around everything. I'm so glad that you had Tamika over there, Todd. Made Men. Made Men has been a letdown. I'm not going to say anything about that. I've never done it. So I don't know what the community is like. But I mean, Todd, if you want to, we can get a Zoom meeting going. We should get another one. I can just do another one. No after party. I mean, I can stay on here. I don't really care. Yeah, we can do a Zoom meeting sometime. We should all catch up. I've been kind of isolated for a while, and I've done that on purpose. And God's been good to me for it. And it was on purpose. And it was for a purpose. I was just telling Charisse, like, she got a hold of me and told me about, she's seen there was something for Content Creation Academy. And there was a an in-person like mastermind meeting with Darius and Myron, and I prayed about it. And you can call me crazy, but God told me, don't go. It's not for you, and there will be negative consequences if you go. And that word that I just shared with you about the Israelites and coming out there, that came to me on Sunday, and that really like helped me a ton. I was struggling there for a little bit about stuff. And it's like, if I would have gone to that, I would have been distracted. I would have been distracted with all the sound and the people and the proposed elevation of my life through the succeeding of my social media following, which would then by extension grow my financial foundation under my feet. I don't care. That would have been distracting to me. It would have been. And I'm not saying that I'm not even saying that the teachers would be saying that. It's just like, you know, when you're in a program, it's at the end. I don't know how many people get this far, so I'll just say it. When you're in a program and you pay for the ticket, it is our human psychological inclination to want that money spent to be worth it. And we do not, you know how hard it is to admit to yourself that if something that you take in for information that you had to pay for, that was a sacrifice to you, if that doesn't specifically goes to you, to your unique calling, how hard it is to filter that through, right? And I think the weight of the ticket cost for some programs, carrying that weight on your shoulders, it psychologically forces you into thinking that this word is for me always. Because one, you don't want to think that you wasted money on it. And you don't want to think of the lesson that you're learning is that maybe God is telling you that you can spend any amount of money on something, and even if you aren't learning from it, God will still bring you out, or he could be doing anything. But the way that money is presented in social media and the way that money is presented in, I'm just going to say it, like Christian spaces or anything, or any space or just anywhere, it's like it's an idol. And I think the weight of the ticket cost on some programs will cause people to create subconsciously an idol out of making sure that it's worth it, right? And I think, there's And it goes the same way with time too, because our human perspectives, when we sit down and learn something somewhere, we don't want to admit to ourselves that maybe the lesson that I'm learning here isn't really the lesson being presented, but it's how God is speaking to me from my perspective of just being here, and not the way that everyone else is getting it. And it's hard. It is hard, and I really think that it's hard to deal with. Because the people, when the Israelites were coming out of Egypt, there was a huge problem for them was to create idols. They wanted an idol, right? Because like God wasn't like near them, or they couldn't feel it, or it seemed like they were getting bored of not being blessed by God almost, because they were on the journey through there. And like Moses goes speaks with God, and he's gone for like so many days, and they think that, well, we must be screwed now. Give us another God to worship. And Aaron like creates a idol for him, and Moses comes out and he's like, what is going on? And I can relate to that so much, because I've done that before in my life. Like I know that God was calling me to a certain path, and then I'll go in that path, and like he'll tell me to pull the parachute, or switch lanes, and I'll just stay in there because I'm like so driven. And I don't want to admit to myself that like I've came this far and it's time to pull out. I need to see it through for the glory of God. And he's like, no, man, it's time to switch lanes. And yeah. But you said that God said that you were supposed to do this, disrupt digital landscape. No one hears who you're disrupting. So I think if no one hears you, who are you disrupting? That's true. That's true. And I've thought about that. And I still believe what I told you months ago, year ago. I still believe it. And I still think it'll come to pass. But one thing I've learned over time is my perspective of what I hear from God is sometimes being ran through filters that I have installed in my brain due to the environment variables that I've taken in that time. And I can twist and contort things. Or God wanted me to perceive it in that manner then, and there's a new way now. And that's not the case. I still believe it. And you're absolutely right. If no one hears, no one hears. But I'm just saying, in order to not create an idol out of viewer count, money, or anything else, I'm good with just going live and just talking to God by myself. Because, I mean, it's totally possible for God to make someone believe something just so they'll go forward, right? And maybe it's true. Like, you don't know who could, if no one watched this, I don't know. I mean, God can do anything with anything. But I agree with you 100%. No, man. This should have been a Zoom. No, you're right. I get it. You were saying that you will do this video with no one watching, but you said that God, you were supposed to disrupt. I can. And I'll disrupt it whenever it's time to disrupt it. It's just, I'm not, here's what I'm saying, Sharice. I am not going to do something that God created, that God didn't tell me to do just because everyone else is doing it that way. I do care about the people I'm called to shepherd. 100%. I care. I care very much. If I didn't care, I wouldn't be willing to go into isolation for like months at a time to wrestle with God and agonizing tears. That's why. You know how much do you know how much you have to care about people in order to stop talking to people, to go and face the demons of your past? You know? It's Todd, can you back me up on this? Can you back me up on this? It is it's harder to love people from a distance when you know you have work to do in yourself, even if they don't understand. But if God is taking you somewhere like within you, and you know the only person going to fix it is you, that's true love for people. When you know that in order to properly love them in the way that God has told you to, and like to shepherd your flock, there are times when you have to like close the door and go in yourself and fix some like PTSD type stuff, right? Which I think is actually, I thought about this when I was like in my zone doing that. And I was like, man, I feel bad for pastors because they have to go up there every Sunday. That's not healthy at all. I don't get it. It's like they got to go up there and preach even when they don't believe it. That's like, dude, that is rough. You can't tell me they believe it every Sunday. The Craig from Life Church, he talked about one time how he was like really going through it. It was like one of the hardest times in his life, and he like sat down and he was like, "Is this even real?" Right? Like he's seen like people get miraculously healed from cancer and stuff, and he has like 50 churches all around the nation, all with thousands of people in them. Like that's insane. And this guy like had a moment where he broke and he was like, is this even real? That's wild. That is wild. That's crazy. But then again, maybe God graces those people with the sort of endurance to be able to go up on stage no matter what, right? And in regards to the money thing, I don't think it's interesting to me. I don't really know what I think about it right now. I've been really thinking about it a lot. I just know to me, in my heart, that I've always known that I'm going to be very financially successful. Like I've always just known that. Like I don't care about it. God has like brought me to that point where I just don't care. I just think it's going to be a runoff from like the primary blessing that he blesses me with. Like I'm not going to have to care about money. And I don't worry about it. I don't idolize it, And what really upsets me is what upsets me is when people talk about their successes in life and they talk about their promotion. They talk about how much money more successful their business is. They talk about all these things that are of the earth rather than how deep my relationship with God has grown. And that really, it sickens me, to be honest with you. It really bothers me a lot. That bothers me. If we all going off to get healed. Well, yeah, see, you guys are out there. I don't need to be there all the time. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. But no, I don't know. I think that God, no, dude. Oh man, that brings something up. I seen an article. I seen an article from like Dude, I seen it like 7 years ago. Someone's blog, just randomly, God put this up in my when I searched for it, and I tried searching the search phrase that I put for using any other different word than the exact phrase that I use, and the blog never showed up. So it was like it had to be the sentence that I put into Google search. Anyways, this blog where it was someone talking about um, mentor idolization and how it like kind of blew my skull out of my mind because I was like, huh. And it was like, you should believe that God's so powerful that he can speak through anybody the way that he's speaking through someone right now. Right? That like, I was like, yeah, that's true. Especially as a person of God. Like me, for instance, if I ever get like a huge following, I should be okay with, I should be cognizant of the fact that these people don't need me. They need God. Right? And yeah, I should be encouraging people to go to whoever brings them closer to him, no matter what. That's hard to digest because there's been people in my life that have really brought me out of a hard place. And I know, well, the example that was given by this girl was her tutor or whatever, or mentor in Christian college. She moved and she was really broken about it. And, you know, it was obvious signs of idolization because she's just a person. We're all just people. God can use any of us, right? And I was like, man, that's true. That's true. But there's a caveat to that too, because God has people that are obviously, at least from our perspective, their favor on them and their calling. I don't know if it's like God gives everyone like a calling that is of equal value, and then it's up to our free will to really maximize the degree to which it really sprawls out into the world and we see the effects, and then our human perspective is what actually we interpret it as, we put the value on it because of just how we perceive things in the world, right? Like it's not anyone's fault that they perceive as having a ton of money as being amazing and like God's blessing that person, because look at what we see every day. I don't blame anybody for thinking that at all. You ever picked up your phone and picked up social media? I mean, I don't blame anyone for that at all. At all. So I don't know if God like gives everyone the same like level of calling, and then it's just up to our free will to really enact it. And that's where like the potency of the reaction of the Holy Spirit and like our psychology and whatever just like triggers everything and sprawls out into the world. Or if he like gives people, I mean, obviously in the Bible, he has certain characters that are given callings that are far greater than others, like Moses, for instance, Abraham and all that, and that's hard to digest. So you could say, and even then you could say, you shouldn't idolize them, but I'm just saying from a human psychological perspective, it would be easy to, because, uh, you know, Moses would be easy to idolize back in the day, right? I can't remember. There was something with Moses that happened, which made it so Moses wouldn't be an idol. Maybe it was Aaron. I can't remember right off the top of my head. But yeah, regardless, I got to get out of here. It's like 10:10. I was going to paint tonight. I'm not anymore. I love you guys very much. Thank you very much for coming. Just remember, God, there's context to everything. None of us are right. I'm going to come back months from now and say that I was an idiot in things that I said. And that's great. That's good. If I don't do that, I'm doing something wrong. I love you, and I will be back on live. What night do I want to be live? I don't know yet. One of the days this week. I'll post on social media when, and yeah, I'll let you know. And God, I pray to you that you please make it so this thing does not crackle when it uploads. In Jesus' name. Seriously. Amen. Because if it does, I'm going to lose my mind. All right. I love you. You have a great night. And you'll be hearing from me. Peace. Love you.